Senator Warren, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, what is your takeaway from the presentations you've heard so far?
So I think the presentations are just overwhelming. I mean, it really just walks us through step by step by step the corruption of Donald Trump and this entire Trump administration. A whole notion that government is there just to serve the personal interests of the President of the United States and his buddies. It's really appalling.
So as part of that presentation earlier today, we heard a lot of talk about Joe Biden.
Yes, we did.
And specifically House Democrats arguing that the reason the president abused his power and asked Ukraine to investigate Biden is because Joe Biden was doing well in the polls, and the polls showed that Biden would beat Donald Trump. Are you worried about that, since that's a key argument that Joe Biden is making out on the campaign trail, that he's the guy who can beat Donald Trump?
No, I don't think of this in terms of the politics. I think of it in terms of, I think the way this argument was framed was to say that so long as Donald Trump didn't see Joe Biden in the presidential race, then he didn't care about an investigation in Ukraine. In other words, he was not interested in corruption for its own sake, whatever kind of corruption might be going on in Ukraine. But the minute Joe Biden appeared to pose some kind of political threat, then all of a sudden Donald Trump is in it, and he's deploying Rudy Giuliani, and he's deploying his bought and paid for ambassador, and he's trying to pull all the levers of power to get this country, Ukraine, that depends deeply on the United States for assistance, to bend to his will for his own political favor. And that's why I say it's corruption. The word just over and over and over is in the testimony, but it's the overall structure.
And I understand that you're saying it's not about politics, and you are doing your constitutional duty, as are the other senators running for president. But what's it like to sit there and listen to the Democrats talk about Joe Biden so much as part of this impeachment trial? Is there a little bit of frustration, or?
No. You know, look, it is my responsibility to be here, but I know what's going on right now back in Iowa. And that is that this grassroots movement that I've spent over a year building is active. And so people have really said, if you've got to be pinned down in Washington for the impeachment, and that's where you should be, then we're just going to redouble our efforts. So people in Iowa, people across the country have gone to ElizabethWarren.com. They've pitched in $5. They've offered to do phone calls. They've done door knocking. I've got people who are there who are speaking on my behalf. Julian Castro has been around the state today. More people are coming in this weekend. It is the reminder. It's not just my fight. It's our fight together.
I want to ask you about some new reporting from my colleagues, Mona Raggio and Jeremy Herb, about some of the sort of talking that's going on behind the scenes among Republican senators about the notion of voting to subpoena witnesses. And what some of them are saying is that, well, wait a minute, if we subpoena witnesses like John Bolton and Mick Mulvaney, the White House, the president is going to claim executive privilege, and that means there's going to be an extended, a protracted fight, which will make this impeachment trial go on longer. Is that something that's in your mind?
Not really. What's in my mind is I don't know how you have a trial without witnesses and without documents. This is supposed to be a fair trial. This is the constitutional responsibility of the Senate to hold a trial. And think about what that would mean. If it means that, gee, the President of the United States, the one who is on trial for impeachment, can just decide to throw up roadblocks, and that means it becomes too hard for the Senate to hold a trial, then the Senate will give up and go home. That violates every principle of the Constitution.
So it's a fight you want to have, you're willing to have, even if it goes past
Absolutely. It's just
the Iowa caucuses, the New Hampshire primary.
It's what we have to do. And remember the position the Republicans are in today. The Republicans walk out, and I heard 2 or 3 of them saying, I heard nothing new. Well, then let's call the witnesses and let's get the documents. You want to hear something new? Bring in the evidence. That's what fair trials are all about.
Have you heard anything new?
You know, watching it all lined up, there are parts of it. The reminder of just how hard the squeeze was on Ukraine and why that meeting in the White House was so important. This was the testimony, not testimony, this was how Hakeem Jeffries, Congressman Jeffries, put it all together. it really is the reminder of, the United States has the whip hand with a country like Ukraine, and Donald Trump was willing to exercise that, not for the benefit of the United States, not for the benefit of Ukraine, not for the benefit of our allies who are in active battle with the Russians, but instead just to use it for his own personal benefit. That's why I say it goes back to corruption. It's going to be the #1 issue in the 2020 election, and it's what I'm going to beat Donald Trump on.
You mentioned Republicans saying, there's nothing new. Is there anything that can be done that the House managers can say that could change enough minds, maybe not to convict the president, but even to get the witnesses that you see are necessary?
Well, I think it's the Republicans have worked themselves into this corner of nothing new on one side, but we're not going to call any new witnesses or get any new evidence. And like I say, you can't have it both ways. If you really want to hear what happened, call the witnesses and bring in the documents. And I think what the House managers are doing such a good job of is they're showing the evidence is there to convict him. But if you really want all of it, then bring Bolton in. Bolton's already said he's ready to testify. Bring in those documents that the White House is hiding or redacting. Bring in the information. Let's get it out there in front of everyone. And then you've got a fair trial, and then people can vote.
Okay, last question. You were drinking milk in there?
I was.
And
Well,
I'm going to out you. You were having some yogurt.
it's a yogurt milk.
Okay.
It is something under it's like the buttermilk I grew up on.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. I appreciate
It's
it.
good to see you.
Jake, back to you.
All right, Dana Bash, thank you so much with Senator Elizabeth Warren. And let's bring what the senator just said back to the discussion we were having. Jamie Gangel, you heard Senator Warren there saying, if you want new information, to her Republican senator friends, if you want new information, you're complaining that everything's old news, let's have witnesses, let's have subpoenas. And Manu Raju, before that, was reporting the White House is sending this threat, in a way, to Republican senators saying, we're going to claim executive privilege on everything, whether you subpoena witnesses or new evidence, new documents. So this idea that you're going to vote next week for all this new material and all these new witnesses, like, we're going to fight that in courts, that could take months and months and months. What do you think?
I think that threat is another political talking point to give the Republican senators another desk to hide under. I think that Mitch McConnell has his votes. I think he has his hall passes. I think what we heard from Senator Murkowski today saying, well, I don't know, I think that tells you which way she's going to go on the vote. I think Susan Collins has indicated not once but twice now that she is likely to vote for witnesses and documents. She is the one in the most vulnerable seat. She needs the cover. But I do want to say what Senator Warren just said about the reminder from the testimony we saw today, I think is so correct. It is so compelling to hear that again, to hear Gordon Sondland, to hear Ambassador Yovanovitch, and also to hear Donald Trump's own words. I think the Democratic managers, the smartest thing they did today was putting Donald Trump front and center.
And putting Rudy Giuliani front and center as well. His words, his peddling of these conspiracy theories. It seemed like today, I agree with both of you, was much more organized. And it also seemed much more tailored to those Republicans that we were talking so much about, Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski. And one of the things they did was they used sort of establishment Republicans to rebut Donald Trump and to rebut Giuliani. So they had like Christopher Wray, they had Tom Bossert, they had Ronald Reagan sitting there with Margaret Thatcher. And so there was this comparison between sort of establishment Republicans. Right. Whose side are you on? Their side or the side of Giuliani and Lev Parnas and Putin? So I thought it was a very interesting way they sort of drew these comparisons. And I think for these establishment Republicans, it's sort of like a question. Do you want to be with Rudy Giuliani or do you want to be with these other folks?
Can we just say every day, if John Bolton wants to speak, he can speak.
He can come
He
on
does
CNN
not
and
have
speak
to
for
wait
2-3
for a
hours
subpoena.
if he wants.
If he doesn't want to do an interview, he can write an op-ed. There is a very easy way for him to get his information.
What do you make of this argument from the White House? don't vote for new witnesses, Republicans. Don't vote for new documents, because we are going to be fighting this in court. We're going to be claiming executive privilege, and you're going to have a months-long legal battle on your hands, and you're going to stretch impeachment out much longer than you want it.
You know, the Senate as an institution should really be offended by that argument, because it's so interesting. Jamie, you might be right that the votes are there and they're not going to vote for the witnesses. But the fact that the president is reportedly threatening that he is going to just challenge every single subpoena that the Senate might issue, like if they actually voted, he's saying that he's going to challenge all of them. That is the subject of the second article of impeachment, that he has obstructed the investigation, that he's obstructing Congress. So really, his threats play into the House managers' arguments that they're going to make tomorrow on obstruction.
Could it backfire? That's the question.